Good afternoon and welcome everybody to our second In Conversation talk. It gives me great pleasure to welcome today's moderator, Dr. Shidong Wang. For any questions you have during the session, please could you put them in the question and answers section of the webinar? And I am going to hand over to him now. So once again, thank you for joining us and have a wonderful talk.
Good afternoon, everyone. For some of you on the other side of the world, good evening. Welcome to the latest of In Conversation series of from OPGDI, also the Prospects and the Global Development Institute. I am Shidong Wang, the director of OPGDI at Regent's Park College, Oxford University. It's my great privilege to inviting a few colleagues with a good panel to discussing the topic on blended teaching, the impacts, the new prospects for international higher education. The pandemic has been influencing people's life and work dramatically. And as you probably know, if you're not from UK, that we are entering the second national lockdown here in UK, as it's probably a second wave of national lockdown across Europe. And it feels like, a lot of uncertainty for the impacts of the pandemic on higher education. Following on previous dialogue, we had a discussion on a fair global vaccine allocation, though it seems the vaccine is still not there yet. And today we continue the dialogue focusing on the most urgent topics and challenges arising from the pandemic. And we're fortunate to have two panelists with us to talk about the impacts of the pandemic on higher education. Before I move to the central question, I'm very delighted to introduce the panelists who are staying with us today. Professor Sun Hua is the director of Center for Excellent Teaching and Learning at Peking University. The Center of Teaching and Learning at Peking University conducted an overall system for improving and developing the teaching system in PKU during the pandemic. Professor Sun has developed his own research in pedagogy and cross-cultural communications. His previous experience at the PKU covered very wide responsibilities, such as he was the dean of the School of Journalism and Communication, the deputy director in School of Planning and Policy Research of PKU. He was also the executive dean of Yuanpei College, liberal arts college at Peking University, one of the first liberal arts college, I believe, in China universities.
Yes.
And also today he has his colleague, Miss Wang Fang, who is working on the technology support side of teaching and learning with him at PKU. And on our Oxford side, we have Dr. Lynn Robson, who is a tutorial fellow in English literature. And Dr. Robson is also the director for admission for English faculty, the joint director for studies of classics and English at Regent's Park College. She is also the dean of the college. Dr. Robson is the academic director of Oxford Prospects and the Global Development Institute, where she and me working quite closely. And she heading our waiting student program, which is a joint scheme with 6 of our Oxford colleges. Dr. Robson teaches early modern literature to undergraduates, studying English language and literature, classics and English, history and English. She is the convener for the master course in women's studies. She is currently working on 2 projects based on Shakespeare's play. Dr. Robson has won awards from Oxford University for outstanding teaching and outstanding pastoral support for students. So before I kick off my question section, I just want to remind the audience who wish to ask questions, you can actually click the question and answer Q&A button at the bottom of your screen during the process, and to type in your question, and we will pick up the question during the process. So firstly, I would like to ponder a bit from both the panelists' experience about teaching and learning in the new norm of the pandemic disruption. Professor Sun Hua, I'm very glad to have met you. I think probably last January, we had a very nice chat and a tea at Regent Park College Senior Common Room.
Yes.
Back then, none of us would have imagined we now have been entered into a totally different world. And I remember you returned back to Peking University quite soon after our meeting, probably. So
yes.
So I wonder, can we start with yourself? Just share us a bit experience, how the teaching and learning being implemented in PKU as the evolving situation of the pandemic. I suppose China is probably some pace, some stage earlier than where we are now. We can hear from your sharing your experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Shidong, for inviting me to the webinar today. I'm pleased to share with all the participants today about the teaching and learning of Peking University over the past months of COVID-19. I'd like to share my screen on which some photos and statistics could be shown clearly. In the special time of the COVID-19 outbreak, online teaching has become the main teaching method for colleges and universities globally. It's important that universities and colleges train teachers in conducting online education within a short period of time to ensure the success of online teaching under unprecedented pressures and challenges. These statistics on September 24 can be updated to the current date, showing the opening status of schools and universities in different countries. We can see the partially open areas mainly in North America and Oceania, closed areas mainly in South America, South Asia and the Middle East, and some African countries. Full open areas mainly in Europe and Asia. School closures and economic stagnation are two major impacts on higher education. The countermeasures for schools closures are categorized following: releasing COVID-19 information and providing relevant training, providing training remotely for teachers and headmasters, deploying online courses on a massive scale, establishing and training tutors and faculty working groups to support parents and students. Among these measures, online teaching can truly make up for the loss of human capital, but due to the differences in economic, technological, and educational level from country to country, the basic conditions and preparations for online education also differ. In China, Ministry of Education made an announcement that all schools and universities should coordinate national, local, and school-based teaching resources, make a rich variety of quality online education resources available to all regions, and provide support and services for continued learning during school closures in different regions. On February 17, 2020, Peking University started with a new semester as per its academic calendar through various modes of online teaching. The university offers 4,000 courses by 3,000 teachers with 30,000 students signing up for these courses. According to the feedback from the inspection group consisting of senior professors, online courses have managed to meet the teaching goal, and many of them even improve the teaching performance through adopting innovation methods. The successful shift from offline teaching to online teaching is attributed to the coordinated work of the disciplinary schools and the departments and the supportive departments. Many teachers felt quite nervous and anxious about the new modes, as they have never tried online teaching before. To ease their pressure, the Center for Excellent Teaching and Learning providing training sessions, not only on technical tools, but also on teaching methodologies and strategies to improve teaching student interaction and learning experience. In addition to training, we have set up the hotline, information mailbox, and WeChat group to provide support 7/24. Peking University offered 5+N modes of online lectures, including live streamed lectures, pre-recorded lectures, MOOCs, webinars, and studio lectures, offering the best possible solution based on the real campus conditions. We finally found out most undergraduate courses were delivered by live stream, accounting for 20% of the total, while the webinars, the pre-recorded lectures, and the MOOCs account for 23%, 19%, and 7% respectively. As most postgraduate courses are taught in smaller size classes, online teaching modes can be more diversified, mainly in the form of live streamed and webinars. Taking into account of the characteristics, contents, and syllabus, teacher-student interaction, around 25% of the courses adopt 2 or more different modes, and comprehensive use of multiple modes proved to conducive to better learning result. We also launched the third training to faculties in April, focusing on online examination system. So far, the Peking University online examination system solution has been developed by using Blackboard, Classroom, Canvas, live streamed tools, and Proctor tools. The solution supports multiple types of online examinations, include system security and stability. What's more, graduate thesis proposal presentation has been conducted online, as well as thesis defense. This thesis review had been conducted both online and offline. The system had been upgraded as planned, and related training has been launched. We renew the equipment in all classrooms to ensure all of them can support live stream the lectures in the beginning of this semester. Every classroom can support real-time live broadcasting of on-campus lectures to provide simultaneous viewing or playback for students who cannot return to campus or in self-isolation on the campus. The teachers found that hybrid online and offline mode does fit some courses, so online teaching will continue to play a very important role after the pandemic. The online teaching in the spring semester has uncovered constraints in various aspects, such as course design, software, internet, and technical support, while multiple online teaching methods have provided a scenario as close as possible to traditional lectures in light of these constraints. It is believed that after the online teaching is widely accepted, more teachers will use blended teaching method more effectively, working out the best way to combine online and offline teaching, and constantly to improve the educational and learning experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor, for your sharing of what you've been doing at Peking University. That seems like a massive procedure you have been taking at your center,
Yeah.
which sounded to me in the past was like, if I mean, it's more like a supplementary office of the university, now pushing you into the center position of the university, like engineering of the operation of the university, which is probably a pleasant thing for your department development, but I know could be also a painful thing to put that up in such a short notice. May I move to Lynn because Lynn is involved a lot on teaching and also a lot on administration, supervision of different course programs. And you probably know Oxford has slightly different system and quite a unique tradition from the rest of universities of the rest of the world. So when pandemic was happening here, it was in March, which is the term break fortunately, term break for Oxford. And soon after the new term, we moved into online teaching. So from March, which is the Trinity term, the third term of Oxford, until now where we are, Lynn, do you want to share with us what's your experience of what has been happening, especially taking into Oxford as quite a different university system? Thank you.
Thank you, Shidong. Thank you so much. Yes, so when the first lockdown came, it was at the very end of our second 8-week term of the university year. So in some ways that was fortunate because it gave us the vacation break to work at still continuing to provide our students with their education when they returned virtually at the beginning in April to come back and start learning again. It meant that all of us were working flat out during a time when we would normally be researching or we would normally be recuperating after the term. So it was a lot of work in a very short amount of time. I think probably there are two things I would say, first of all, about the way Oxford organises its education. The first is that Oxford is a collegiate university, so that means that the undergraduates live in colleges throughout the city. So we have around 40 separate colleges of varying sizes. So these aren't just dormitories, or halls of residence. This is actually for the undergraduates where all their teaching and learning is organised and also delivered. And the university, in terms of the faculties and departments, have oversight of that, but they aren't involved in the day-to-day delivery of teaching for a lot of the students. So it's managing that relationship. So the faculties and departments provide lectures, and the lectures immediately all moved online. So a very similar kind of arrangement to the one that Professor Sun was describing. Lectures were recorded, some of them in advance, and were made available to the students throughout that vacation and then into our final term. And involved in that process was our Centre for Teaching and Learning at Oxford, educating faculty members about how to actually practically do that, providing guidance and support for people who had never had to record a lecture in their lives. So, all of that was happening. But within the colleges, it was a slightly different and maybe a slightly more straightforward process, because Oxford educational system is based on the tutorial. And the tutorial is a weekly meeting between 1 or 2 students, sometimes 3, and their professor. And so that is uniquely adapted to moving very swiftly online, because all we need is the technology and we can carry on teaching. But the challenge for us with having a university with all of our students dispersed into their homes was guiding them through that change, and also guiding staff through that change, but also reassuring students, for example, that library provision was going to still be there for them. This was one of the main concerns that our students had. How were they going to get hold of all the material that they needed in order to do their studies? Because the tutorial system is based on independent learning. So we have this idea that the tutorial happens once, possibly twice a week, and those are the contact hours that the students have. And in between that, they're expected to go away and pursue their work independently. So that depends on access to libraries. So for the libraries themselves, the library staff, this was a huge job, because the university again has the Bodleian, which is library, which is the copyright library, which serves the whole university. But then each department and each faculty has its own library, each college has its own library. So how were we going to make these resources easily available to the students so we could reassure them that they could carry on with their learning even while they were at home? So although the ability to teach a tutorial online was pretty straightforward, the kind of support the students needed was far from straightforward. And I have to say that coordinating that effort between faculties, departments, colleges, libraries, laboratories, and so on was a complex and time-consuming process. But there was a lot of cooperation at every level across Trinity term. That last of our 3 terms in our academic year is usually a little bit lighter when it comes to teaching, because that is our examinations term. So 2/3 of our students are going to do examinations in that term. Now that presented a whole other level of complexity and challenge, because the examinations are overseen by the university. And also each faculty and each department would have different needs for their particular examination for the students. So our job was very much about guiding our students through that process, acquainting ourselves as teachers and directors of studies with actually how the examinations were going to run, what format they were going to take, and then guiding our students through that. As colleges, we had to help them prepare for a very different kind of examination from the one that they were expecting. We had to communicate with our students individually about what their technological capabilities were. We were very concerned about the widening gap between the most advantaged and the most disadvantaged of our students in terms of what access, secure access and stable access they might have to the internet, for example, and what that might mean when they came to sit their examinations. I could answer specific questions about the examinations process if anybody's interested. All examinations moved online, and again, the university, working with departments and faculties, introduced a very robust system for considering mitigating circumstances, for example, when it came to finalizing examination results at the end of the term. So it was a very steep learning curve, not just for our students, but it was a very steep learning curve for us as teachers as well, about how to not only adapt our teaching to being online, but also making sure that we were understanding our students' needs and their anxieties, so we could best support them through this. We all face the technological challenge of moving on to Teams, which is our sort of preferred method at Oxford. And I had my first experience of teaching an online seminar course the very first time in that term. And again, because the technological side of Teams was still in development, I found myself facing a kind of virtual room full of students I'd never met before, and I couldn't see them because they couldn't have their cameras turned on because, again, the bandwidth was a problem. So that was a particular challenge for me. How do you form a relationship with a group of students you have not met before? And particularly at a university where we are, our whole education system is based on small group teaching. Yeah. Sort of the biggest lectures we might have in this university are probably for around 200 students. That's the largest lecture we'll do. Many lectures are much smaller than that, and the majority of our teaching is for much, much smaller groups. So this kind of ability to form personal relationships with our students is exactly what our education system is about, and that was a challenge for all of us. So we also, like Peking University, we use Canvas, we use the same kind of strategy, exactly the same kind of strategies that Professor Sun described so well in his presentation. So there's a lot in common there. Yeah, I don't know if that's probably enough detail from me for the moment, but I'm very happy to take questions and talk more about that if people would like to know.
Thank you very much, Lynn, for sharing so much coordination job, which is being shared by different office, different department of the wider university. And I'm sure it's a lot input as well.
Sorry, Shidong, did you want me to say something about now, how it's different?
If you want, I can just carry on with, I think, like probably.
I don't mind. If you want me, I could say something very briefly about now.
Sure, please. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So very briefly, the difference is that we now have students back, which is great. Students have been back in Oxford since the beginning of October. And even though we've just now entered our second lockdown, the students are staying. The government has said very clearly that students should stay in their universities, not only for the sake of their education, but also as a public health concern. They don't want students traveling back to their homes, particularly as in the UK at the moment, the age group in which the incidence of COVID has been highest during the second wave has been the 18 to 21-year-olds. So they kind of want to keep them in their universities. So we've adopted much more of a blended approach this term. And so it's a combination of in-person teaching, socially distanced, wearing face coverings, but also online teaching. And in some seminars, using both simultaneously. If we have students who are self-isolating, either because they've been told to, because they've been in contact with somebody with the virus, or they actually have contracted the virus themselves. So we're getting very much more used to that kind of thing. We've also been very cautious about allowing members of staff to decide whether they want to do face-to-face in-person teaching or whether they wish to carry on entirely online. And we've made that a personal choice for individual members of staff, because obviously everybody has their own concerns and have their own particular contexts, family context. So they may be, for example, very concerned about somebody in their family who might be thought of as being particularly vulnerable. So it's not just blended learning for the students, it's also blended teaching for the tutors too.
Sure, thank you very much, Lynn, for sharing what's been doing now as well. And for as you just mentioned as well, where technology bit is probably quite new for a lot of colleagues who never would have thought you use heavily the teaching rely on technology. So before I'm moving on to talking about the unpleasant bit of the technology teaching and learning, I know there's a lot of painful things we can talk later. I wonder if there's anything positive you are thinking, which is online, teaching and learning, which could be brought in by the pandemic. You want to? I don't know. I know. Miss Wang is working on this at Peking University. Do you want to share some of this of your opinion? Yeah.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Yeah, there are some advantages when we look at online teaching, as a supplement to offline classrooms. The first one, as you might have seen, that is the access of the session recording, which will help the students with a better command of what has been taught in class, in the physical classroom. So if we say the application of EdTech is to minimize the background gap between the students, then the rewatch of the recorded sessions will empower the students with the ability to keep up with others more effectively. And secondly, I think it is found that, in fact, the online teaching improved self-study capability, and as a result, improved the study outcome. That is why, according to the survey of Peking University, the satisfaction rate was even higher than expected, and quite a number of students suggested keeping the online teaching with offline in the post-pandemic period. And thirdly, I think the online teaching, to some extent, offered a solution to teaching resource imbalance and made the sharing of the global academic and research in a flexible way. I think all of us have had the experience during the pandemic of enjoying more seminars or webinars, online talks in various fields you're interested in, which was not very predictable before the pandemic, right? So for the education on campus, in fact, the online teaching will be helpful to set up a new environment of the course delivery in which global collaboration or co-delivery of the courses will be embraced more in the future. So I think these are all the positive sides to the education sector by the technology. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Wang, for sharing. What's your opinion on technology involvement in teaching and learning in the positive side? You anticipate I'm going to pick it, on this question. So my next question try to explore a bit on the other side of the coin, which is we know, I suppose there's difference for online teaching and learning for bigger groups like lectures, and also for smaller groups like what we do here, tutorials. Or because Professor Swing also mentioned that in Peking University, you have graduate students, that's more small size, intensive participation in interacting. So this is the question, I suppose, related to inclusivity as well. If some students, due to some reason, cannot simply attend the seminar or small group teaching tutorial, let's say, how does the tutor going to help that? I mean, a record would work for lectures very well, I suppose, but for small size, which need more interactive and participating, how do you think we can work on this? Like for the inclusivity for some people, let's say international students who cannot be there simply because time difference, they probably sleeping time. This is difficult. I mean, purely online teaching, if all online, that's simple, that's easy. But when it's also divided between online and face-to-face, the attention of the professors also be, diverted into different direction. I think all these questions related to inclusivity, accessibility. I wonder whether you can give some opinion, like either Lynn or
Yeah. Am I okay to go first? Is that
sure,
right? Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, I think what Professor Wang was saying, it's so interesting, because this idea of inclusion and accessibility and diversity in education was a topic before the pandemic hit. Yeah, so this was something that we would discuss always at college meetings or faculty meetings. Yeah, how can we be more inclusive? How can we make this a positive experience for our students with specific physical challenges or with specific learning difficulties? Yes, but it always seemed in some way to be they were in the minority, as it were. So we were catering to the minority. So ideas of recording lectures or seminars, or again, how you include people from different countries, where they might be, suddenly that's become the majority. we're all of us in some ways in need, we all have specific learning needs, yes? We all have challenges that have been presented by this new way of thinking about teaching and learning. So I think in terms of inclusivity and therefore accessibility, and therefore the demand that as teachers and institutions, we are much more creative in our approach to learning and thinking about education and thinking about how we deliver education, then the pandemic has presented a really important opportunity. Yes, I mean, you know, taking account, this is something I've had to do this term because one of my students is in South Korea. Yes, so we have to think about that student when we're organizing classes and tutorials, not just in the college, but in the faculty as well, to know that we have that student. I can't record a tutorial, so I have to make sure, and I have to be flexible and creative as a teacher to make sure that things are organized and that I communicate with people so that student can attend and that student is always included. So, I mean, I think this is probably one of the most interesting and productive things that's going to come out of this time. We're all longing to get back to normal, but I think this heightened awareness of the importance of inclusivity, of accessibility, of diversity, of reaching out to others, yes, to minorities, groups within education in particular, it should be one of the most important things that we keep from this time.
Mhm.
Thank you, Lynn. Ms. Wang, do you have anything to share?
Yeah. I think when we, as you mentioned, when we look at the other side of the coin, when we look at the other side of the online education, we definitely will see some disadvantages, in which I think the main concern is whether online teaching is as effective or as efficient as offline classes, right? In fact, in China now, the online teaching platforms available in China are quite diversified to meet different teaching goals, which integrated with different teaching tools or embedded collaborative workflow functions, so that the teaching effectiveness has been solved to a much better extent. But the big problem, in fact, is mainly from the difference of the internet connection, if we can put it into like software or hardware availability among the students, such as Lynn has mentioned, internet connection or stability, right? Or any like the time zone difference. If we put these differences aside, look at the online teaching tools, inclusivity has been worked out in China in some way. For example, I know in the UK, most universities are using Zoom or Teams or other platforms, right? Then in Peking University, besides these platforms of the video conferences, we also established the smart classroom with the Chinese online education supplier ClassIn. In the smart classroom, we have Chinese students in the physical classrooms, while the foreign students are at their home countries to attend the class online. So the professor can easily include those students online to participate in the discussions or presentations in the classroom. They can also work in breakout rooms to collaborate on projects on the digital blackboard. So it's easier. Then the professor can even share all the online students' screens to review their work and give back just in the class immediately, just in the similar way as they sit in the classroom. So if any students didn't follow well in the class, he and she can replay the recording, right? But still, if for the students with the very big time zone difference, for example, 8 hours or 10 hours, it's really hard to solve these problems. But we assume this kind of offline merged online classrooms will be more and more popular in the future, in which it will work in a more positive way than the negative way, I think. Yeah.
Thank you for Ms. Wang for your sharing. I have quite a few questions actually, which I think I can summarize probably a bit from the questions which have some similarities. One question from Jennifer Tyrell, another one from Rachel. I suppose the question is about what steps, I think very specific, what steps may be taken to address this form of sensory learning? In another way, as another person asked, how do you keep a student more active and motivated during the class? What do you see the teacher's role in stimulating that? And I mean, Lynn probably want to address because you are doing a lot of teaching by yourself as well. Sorry, Lynn, you probably mute yourself.
Sorry,
yeah.
I'm just reading the questions. Yes.
Yeah.
I would say, so again, I would be interested to hear from Professor Sun and about kind of what activities you might do with a large group of students. I mean, I think my job's a bit easier because I'm working with quite small groups of students, and it's easy to keep them motivated. Yes, kind of when you're one-to-one with someone, they can't be anything other than motivated because there's no escape. But I would say I think that I found even when I've been involved in much larger courses, and you sort of assume that the students might not be so interested, what is always really interesting to me is how engaged and how motivated they are by what they're being asked to participate. I mean, it's I think that this assumption that students will lose motivation is the experience that I've had this year is quite the reverse, in fact, that the students that I've been involved in teaching both at Oxford, but also I taught on quite a large course, interdisciplinary course, which involves students in China, that their levels of motivation were very high. They attended all the time, they participated by asking questions, and I give them the credit for that rather than for anything that I might actually do. Yes, I suppose it's probably easier to sort of say that the tutorial system, a tutorial is based on the students themselves producing work. They have to write a paper every week on an agreed topic. So tutorial learning is based on student activity. If they don't produce something, then the tutorial may not happen, but it certainly won't work very well because they have nothing to contribute. So I think that a mindset which Oxford promotes in its students from the very beginning, that our students are active in their learning. Yeah, that they need to participate to make this work. That it's not just about the teacher taking on the responsibility. And I think that that's really important. It's one of my key ideas as a teacher, that what I'm doing is building a relationship of mutual trust. Yeah, they need to trust me as a teacher, that I'm going to be arriving ready to teach them, that I have a specific subject knowledge which they want to engage with, but I also trust them that they're going to produce the work, that they're going to join in this conversation with me. And I think that establishing that kind of relationship, it sounds rather as if it's kind of at the softer end of things, but it's not. It's actually a very rigorous demand for a teacher to make of students. But that kind of initial engagement tends to keep their levels of motivation high. So I'm sorry I can't give any kind of directly practical tips. I would hand over to my colleagues, who I think are wonderful and a much more expert in motivating much larger groups of students than I have to motivate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wonder, Professor, do you want to have any points you want to address here?
Yes, I think it can be done by online platform tools, and maybe Dr. Wang Fang could share some tools about.
Okay, what you are looking now is one of the most popular platforms in Peking University we're using now. So in Peking University, we are using Zoom, we are using Teams, and also Blackboard and Canvas. And also we have this China local teaching platform, Get the API Connected, embedded into Blackboard. So on this platform, you can see we have so many different tools here. Yes, which, for example, we have the timer, we have the dice, we can give the students a trophy for their answer questions, and we can share the students' screen, and we can deliver the board, the small board, to each student, asking them to give their answers, just like handouts in the physical classroom. And we can also have breakout rooms so that the students will be allocated into different groups for discussion, and finally have the presentation by each group. So in fact, now all this collaboration and also the interactive tools are very easily and very all accessible to the teachers. So in fact, how to promote to improve the efficiency of the online teaching, it's much depending on how initiatives the professors want to do with the new tools, how much they want to get involved into these new tools. I think just in a similar way, like for example, 10 years ago, the teachers started to use like PPT or other multimedia teaching tools to make their classrooms more attractive to the students. So now it's another era for the teachers to learn about these new rules, to get a better control of the classroom and to increase the interactions in classroom. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much for your sharing, Miss Wang. So I'll move a little bit away from the technology bit of the teaching learning. And one question I want to ask is, I noticed there's also a question from the students asking, from Mimi Farah Jazamai. And the question is similar to the question I prepared. Is we know that online teaching has been helping increase a lot of different level of stress and anxiety for students. So I know both Lynn and Professor Sun have been working on student pastoral support role in both institutions. Can you try to tell us, share a bit what the university, the college are doing to support the students' well-being and mental health in this particular time? We may just go briefly. I realize I'm slightly running slower than my agenda. Thank you. Lynn, you are unmute yourself. Thank you.
I'll let Professor Sun go first.
Thank you, Lynn. COVID-19 posed a huge challenge to Peking University students in last semester. More than 40,000 students couldn't return to the campus. Every day, our staff responsibility for student affairs at all schools of Peking University had to make more than 40,000 phone calls to learn the students' conditions, to inform them of Peking University's COVID-19 prevention measures and modes of teaching. Our staff also paid special attention to students with mental health problems. For students from families with financial difficulties, our staff sent them computers and mobile phones and purchased the internet traffic for them to ensure they had no difficulty access the internet. Peking University required tutors of all the schools and departments to have one-on-one communication with students to prepare them for graduation, for helping them complete all the courses, to providing would-be graduates with synthesis writing and defense guidance. a lot of efforts were made to offer more job opportunities. This year, we released over 100,000 job opportunities, a 75% increase in online information of job vacancies than last year. So graduates' employment this year was almost as good as previous years. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, of course, we faced similar issues here in the UK, and we've had the particular problems now with the start of the new academic year, which is to support our first year students, our new students, as they settle into university life in a very unusual time. And at a time when so for example, I should explain that being dean of a college in Oxford means that my main responsibility is to make sure that the environment is such that it promotes the health and well-being of all of our students. So my concern is not so much with their academic work, that's the responsibility of some of my colleagues. My responsibility is with the students' well-being, and also for ensuring, and dealing with their behaviour when it maybe falls a little bit short of what we would like it to be. So I've been absolutely involved with thinking about how we best prepare our college to keep the students, first of all, safe in terms of infection, how we manage it along with all the government guidelines, with our responsibilities to public health, but also how we try and mitigate those circumstances somewhat so that our students do feel as though they're getting that really important experience of first being at university. And because the schools in the UK have been closed since March, the majority of our first year students were just so delighted to be here. To be back in full-time education was for them a huge thing. Helping the students to understand that their experience, although very different in some ways, isn't different in other ways, and it's our job to do that. So what we did over the course of the summer was work very closely with our existing students. There's a very strong network of support for students amongst the students themselves. So we consulted with our undergraduates and postgraduates at every point, getting their cooperation, their input into our planning. The students have what are called peer supporters within their student cohort. So these are people to whom they can go and as a kind of first port of call if they're having any anxieties. We've also been much more proactive, as you have in with Peking University, in reaching out to our students and saying, what difficulties are you facing? Yes, how can we help with that? We're here to help you. And these are the kind of practical solutions that we might be able to help you with. And here are the other kinds of support that we can offer you. So it's a cooperative and collaborative effort, which is ongoing at the moment. I just, in fact, met with my team this morning in college to discuss. We meet every week to talk about ongoing issues, and obviously that's been complicated this term by the fact that we have students moving in and out of isolation, and how best we support them on a practical level, but also on an academic level, how they are able to carry on with their learning, even though they may be isolating for anything up to 2 weeks. So yeah, a kind of very sort of similar idea, but that idea, what we're really talking about is what we know very well, that you cannot really separate out the academic life and the personal life of any of us. Yes, the two are absolutely connected to one another. So we're just put the systems in place so that we're alert much sooner to any academic issues that might be coming up, and then thinking immediately about whether that might be connected to something else that's going on, for example, and vice versa. So yeah, that's the kind of things that we're doing.
Thank you, Lee, for sharing that. I mean, both Professor Swing as well. I'm very glad to hear that so much collective effort have been putting together on students' personal or pastoral needs. as our top priorities to providing with them the best learning experience they could have and make sure they achieve the most great outcome of their study at university. However, I do not really want to ignore the fact that massive pressure at the same time had been accumulated on our professors, teachers and education provider side. How does the pandemic might have been make us reflect our practical capacity, physical, mental, and emotional as teachers? I wonder, can you share some of this? Which I think this is a widely very important topic, but probably it have been under talked, discussed in the current situation. Thank you.
Do either of my colleagues want to go? I've realized that I've been talking quite a lot, so.
Does Professor Sun want to, or either of you want to talk a bit?
Okay, because my center is Center for Excellent Teaching and Learning. We did not see mental or emotional pressure from the faculties after the training session. In fact, the most pressure of our faculties was how to teach online. For example, how to teach without a blackboard is a real challenge for faculty from School of Mathematical Science, who were not used to teaching without a blackboard. How to write a blackboard online, how to avoid the impact of network instability on the reasoning process, how to select a priority network platform, how to avoid uncertain disturbance at home. It's the faculty pressure. Finally, the teachers who are used to teaching with a blackboard decide to come to campus to record or live stream online courses facing the empty classroom so that the students could watch the courses online at any time, anywhere. So it's my, thank you.
Thank you, Shidong. Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's made me think about always about my own teaching practice. So having to adapt to online teaching has been, why do I teach the way I do? And can this move easily into an online format, or do I need to be thinking about changing that? I'm very conscious again, and I'm sure Professor Sun and Professor Wang is the same, of how hard my colleagues throughout the university have been working. All of us are giving a huge amount of our time and effort to this, and particularly in the UK, our government has changed its mind a huge amount. So you can kind of put in a lot of plans in place, and then the next day they change their mind. So then you have to kind of adapt. So I think that the support from my colleagues across the university and within the college where I work itself has been absolutely vital to being able to keep going. I have thought a lot about the fact that as a teacher, just what you were saying, Professor Sun, we like to be in control of our space, don't we? We like to know there's a blackboard. We like to know, we kind of walk into a classroom or a lecture hall thinking, I know my subject, I know what I'm going to say, I know how I'm going to say it, and everything works. And of course, what this time has made me think about is I'm not in control. I'm at the mercy of the internet suddenly going down, or the shared screen not working, or one of the students finding they can't hear what I'm saying. So I've had to kind of relinquish that to some extent, and be much more open about, again, sharing with my students that I'm uncertain about this. Yes, I'm not entirely sure how this is going to work, but we're going to do this together and we're going to work through it. And I think that is something I've thought about a lot, particularly as I have felt increasingly tired as the months have gone past, and what effect that might be having on my effectiveness as a teacher, but also as somebody who is very much involved, as you are, Professor Sun, with the emotional and mental health of our students. So it's that kind of idea, because as we all know, we can only be good teachers, effective teachers, if we understand ourselves. And I think that this time has made me reflect a lot on that as well. So yeah.
Thank you, Lynn, for sharing. I believe that we all understand that no matter students or the faculty, all have like stress under this difficult time. So it's important thing also the teachers need to reflect taking good care of themselves, and so that the institutions need to
exactly
reflect
how well is the institution looking after us as well. I think the institution, because as teachers and as universities we are focused on our students, absolutely we should be, but as teachers as well, the question must be how well is the institution set up to look after us, because we are its most valuable resource in many ways.
I'm very I'll share the same with you as well. Very much with you, Lynn. Thank you. So to move a little bit to another bit of agenda, I realize I'm really running out of time. So I'll combine some questions I prepared together. So the most affected people of students, student body, I would think is international students, because potentially they cannot travel here, potentially they have different culture, barriers, probably have quarantine, they cannot get their visa, various reasons. So everybody we're talking about actually before September, there's going to be a dip, a drop of international students coming to UK. However, according to the data I got so far from UCAS, University and College Admission Service from the UK, the students actually set a record of increase who are coming to enroll in UK. The students from no EU international students rising up by 9%. The normal time, the students actually from European Union are dropping by 2%. So overall, I think it's still a big increase. So how do you see this phenomenon? I wonder that Professor Swing or Mr. Wang want to share a bit. How do you see this? Why, I suppose Chinese students' body contribute a lot to this international students' boost of, coming to UK. How do you see this phenomenon? Do you think the trend of increase would continue? Do you think, like some people put in an extreme way, this pandemic probably will be, will be, stop the internationalization of higher education to some degree? How do you see that? Mr. Wang?
Yes, Chinese students seeking to study abroad have been greatly affected by the situation. In particularly, the number of students applying for especially US universities or having received offers from US universities had dropped much compared with previous years. First, for students who have not been admitted by foreign university or have not been employed, they can apply for a second degree so they can continue their studies in Peking University. Students who have been admitted to first class university abroad but are unable to make the trip due to COVID-19 can apply for a postgraduate program at Peking University. We can see the number of students applying for US universities decreased this year, while more students apply for European universities, especially UK universities. So secondly, we also provide assistance to foreign students in Peking University. For example, students from Cornell University who are stranded in China and cannot go back to the US for study can apply for exchange program. They can choose Peking University courses with their credits recognized by their home universities. And we enhance the exchanges and the cooperation with foreign universities during the pandemic. We offer the students with academic writing guidance together with the Writing Center of Harvard University, explore the teaching reform, the teaching evaluation in post-COVID-19 with UCL, and collaborated with the University of Michigan in conducting the innovative and evidence-based pedagogy. It's a 1-week project. During the pandemic, we worked together with the Teaching Development Center universities in the UK, in the US, Japan, and Singapore online to promote teaching development. So I think international collaboration is a trend after pandemic. Thank you.
Yeah, there's no doubt that the pandemic has had a negative effect on the visiting student programs at Oxford. Those are the programs where students come from to spend a year studying at Oxford, so like a junior year abroad program, and certainly our partner institutions in China and in the US as well have cancelled those programs for absolutely understandable reasons. That has had an impact, although I still do have some students in the US and in China who are studying remotely, and I applaud their optimism and courage in doing that, and they're really enjoying their online tutorials and lectures and seminars, even though they can't physically be in Oxford at the moment. As Shidong said, again, the optimism of the students that we've just had all of our undergraduate applications coming into Oxford. They come in the middle of October, and we've had an increase again this year in the number of applications for undergraduate courses from both international and domestic students. So that would indicate that optimism is high for the next academic year. And although Oxford itself as a university was predicting all sorts of dire consequences, particularly to our postgraduate students this year, of whom a large are international students. We have in fact got a lot more postgraduate students here than we had initially expected. The numbers didn't drop, in fact the numbers went up, and it was the same for our undergraduates as well. I think that so I think there's a lot of cause for optimism for the future, but I think the difficulty is the uncertainty, particularly as Professor Sun was saying, maybe not for full-time degree programs, but for these programs that are shorter term, and allow our students to have a hugely valuable experience of life and education in another country. I think we may be seeing those take a little bit longer to recover, because obviously the confidence amongst the students and also their home institutions needs to be able to recover as well. And again, I was talking about lack of control. We don't have much control over that. We're going to have to wait and see what happens. But I think that the spirit of collaboration between us, and particularly I value our relationship with the universities in China, and I look forward to kind of building that future when we can. It'll be good. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Lynn and Professor, for your positive outlook about the future, which I share the same, which I also think that's very important when things back to normal. When we're talking about when things back to normal, I'm sure the pandemic will walk away to at some stage. It's just a matter of time. Let's say in a couple of years, the virus COVID became like a flu-like disease, either because of vaccine or because it just getting weaker infection rate by the virus itself. Do you think? This is. Do you think the teaching will return back to normal? And what we had before. To combine questions, some of the audience ask, what's going to happen after the pandemic? Do you think we still need a physical university if everybody can attend a so-called, bracket Zoom university? So why, how do you see that? This is probably the last question I want to address. Thank you. I wonder either of you want to start. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't mind. Shall I go? Yeah.
Sure, please.
I think one thing that has become very obvious during this pandemic is we need universities. We need physical universities. We need students in them. As we've been saying, I think there's a lot of scope for creativity, particularly with issues of inclusivity and diversity and access, which we can use everything that we've learned during this time to think very seriously about how we go forward with that in our universities. But I personally have no doubt that we need physical university. If there was ever any doubt, I think the pandemic has shown us that we do. Yes. I can see Professor Sun nodding there. So yeah.
Thank you, Lynn. I do agree with you. I think we do need physical universities, though we are embracing the online teaching now. The mission of university education is not only knowledge delivery, but also how to grow up and be ready for the career development and personal life. So in the education reform driven by technological application, I think two issues should be addressed. Firstly, talent training should go beyond the interdisciplinary boundaries. For example, public health during the pandemic required not only the talent of in medicine, but also the supply from different fields such as biology, communication, political science, international relations, engineering, etc. Secondly, teaching and learning platforms that are more open, more conducive to sharing, and more flexible to ensure the delivery of high quality education resources to poor areas in a more effective manner. It's particularly important during the pandemic. I think world-class universities such as Oxford universities, Peking universities should take more responsibility in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you very much to share your spirit, about why the university is justified need to exist. I'm very glad to hear that we do need a physical university. So, so I would like to, to conclude, I would like to draw back our attention to the starting point to conclude the conversation. The pandemic itself is really testing and redefining our teaching learning approach in higher education system in a way which is quite challenging, which we never had imagined before. As a consequence, I think, as you mentioned, I believe we can take the positive side of the practice we have been taking of technology supported blended learning in a way. If there's no this pandemic, this probably will happen anyway in 10 years of time with artificial intelligence, with technology development. But now just pushing us a bit faster on the pathway of blended learning, and of course we hope it can reshape the it's a good opportunity to reshape the internationalization of higher education to build a better and inclusive provision for universities as a physical and virtual place to learn. So thank you very much today for your sharing, which I'm very glad we covered more than I thought, 3 areas of discussion: the blended learning teaching, and also the pastoral support for students, and also for as an institution for the faculties, for the teachers. And also we very glad to have this positive outlook perspective about internationalization and collaboration of higher education. So thank you all for your being with us, sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to remind you about next in conversation events for our audience will take place on the 20th of November, which is a Friday, 2 weeks later. The topic will be ethical, legal, and political conversation in using technology for pandemic response management. So we will have Professor Jeremy Peter from Imperial College in conversation with Dr. Mario Tado, who is the Deputy Director of the Digital Ethics Lab from Oxford University. The host will be Professor Wen Shuangge from Law School of Jilin University and Swansea University. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Shidong.
Yeah,
Bye.
bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care and
Bye.
stay well.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.